Zach,
Yeah.
what did the cannibal get when he showed up to the party late?
I don't know.
Cold shoulder. 2, I'm reading a book on anti-gravity. It's impossible to put down. 3, when a clock is hungry, it goes back 4 seconds.
Boom.
4, what's a pirate's favorite letter? Incorrect. The C.
The C.
4, might be 4, might be 5 now. I don't know.
D. Careful.
Cartoonist found dead at home. Details are sketchy.
Sketchy at best. I like how I supported your jokes with.
I appreciate that, man. Jesus. I mean,
I play a supporting role in many of media. Anywho.
I'm happy with that. All right, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the Hyperbolic Review Chamber, sponsored by
Hal Johnson and Joanne McLeod from Body Break. This episode of Variable is brought to you by Hal Johnson and Joanne McLeod from Body Break.
Be alert. Stay safe.
What a good team.
He had a nice mustache on him.
Yeah, he did. I think he still rocks the mustache.
I hope so.
It probably doesn't even shave off. It's probably like made of
It controls
steel.
him.
They look at an X-ray. The roots are like in his fucking brain.
I hope not.
Anywho.
All right, my name is Matt McGregor, also known as the hero of time management. To my right is Dr. Luigi Zach Lamott, and we are be looking at The Last of Us.
The DLC Left Behind.
Absolutely. So the first and only DLC. So we're going to talk about first. What are your first impressions of the DLC?
First impressions were lousy. I hated it. I wasn't overly impressed.
I'm going to kick you in the mouth.
I wasn't overly impressed with this one. I felt that the DLC took away from Ellie's character for me at some moments, and that it wasn't as lengthy as I was anticipating.
Right.
Generally very good. I mean, like, in terms of the story, there were a lot of things that I absolutely loved about it, but generally when it was done, I was left unhappy.
Right. And I felt very different about it, right? Like,
Right.
we haven't really discussed this at all, but the only thing we had mentioned to each other before we started recording was Zach said he wasn't a big fan, and I disagreed. I think this DLC is very brilliant. I think it adds to the world of The Last of Us in a very, very meaningful way. When The Last of Us came out, it came along-side a graphic novel, American Dreams, and that introduced the character of Riley. So I didn't read it. You didn't read it. Nobody read it.
Nobody read it. I don't think anyone in history has read it.
But anyway, the character of Riley is very, very interesting. It builds on Ellie's character. It allows us to see Ellie before The Last of Us that we got to see with Joel. So Joel is with his daughter and his brother. We get to see that in the prologue before the story of The Last of Us really starts to pick up. So it's great to see that it builds Joel's character in a very meaningful way. And I think that happens with Ellie for this DLC. I think we get to see her being a rebellious teenager. I think that it shows that despite the world changing in a very, very horrific ways, that it's still the same problems that teenagers face, whether it be like they're very confused, you know what I mean, regards of like sexuality, regards and just growing up and finding their place in the world, right? So I felt that they nailed perfectly. I felt that they grew Ellie's character in a very, very meaningful way.
Cello. Sorry, fucking cello.
This is also sponsored by Sony.
Yeah. Right, okay. Well, in terms of that story, I felt like, and I have a feeling everybody is going to disagree with me, so go to hell, everybody. I know, like, my girlfriend Candace definitely disagreed with me, and she barely had seen it, but she was doubting my point of view. So what I felt like is it took away from Ellie's character, and it's because of in the Last of Us, the campaign, you're exploring this world and you're getting to know Ellie just via like her personality, like her contagious personality, and what she's saying and why, and then how she's saying it, right? Like, so in this DLC in Left Behind, I felt like she was that kid in high school that didn't really have a personality, that kind of stole, like, okay, perfect example. You know how in the campaign near the end, actually at the very end, when Ellie's telling Joel that.
Spoiler alert, first of all. Okay, sorry.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, sorry. So, like, for The Last of Us, the game, as well as the DLC. Sorry to interrupt
Right.
you. Just below, I'll label it as spoiler alert. But just to, if you haven't seen it, turn this video off. Go play the game. If you haven't played it yet, that's insanity. Go play it.
Pause this, go beat the game, and then unpause this video.
Then share with your friends.
Exactly. So, yeah, at the very end of The Last of Us in the campaign, she's telling Joel that her and her friends got bit, and then it was supposed to be this girl, and then Riley, and then her, and then they decided, let's just be all poetic and wait it out together. And then I hated when in The Left Behind that was like a direct quote from Riley. It just made me feel that the reasons I started to fall in love with Ellie as a unique, strong human being was actually just almost kind of sponged in from
Derived
her.
from Riley?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's...
And which is cool because it's a love story, more or less, between her and Riley, which is heartbreaking, and I get it, and I still enjoyed a lot of those elements, but I just felt like now if I was to play the campaign, The Last of Us, I just feel like I wouldn't take Ellie as seriously. I would just feel like I know too much about.
Right. No, that's an interesting thought. And the same time, to address that, I feel that I do agree that gives a little bit more insight in regards to whether you feel like it's good or bad on her. But still, that at the end of the day, that gives more about her character, right? So like in a book or a movie or a game, like you're not necessarily supposed to like the characters, right? Like I know you're supposed to like Ellie in The Last of Us. So like, I mean, I don't feel like that should like be judged against The Last of Us if you say like, well, I didn't like the addition of what they did with Ellie, but I mean that was like an artistic choice that they decided to do with The Last of Us. And like again, for myself, like what about like the combat? Did you feel that I didn't know how they were gonna roll combat into this, because in The Last of Us campaign they say that this is the first time Ellie's killed someone or used a gun or something like that.
Right. So I felt like their general gameplay mechanics were genius. Like they had these segments of Ellie when she's helping Joel. So it gives the user, like a high, very, very tense and combat, oriented experience. While telling this tale on the other, like when it would go into the other segments, while telling this tale about Ellie and her friend Riley.
And so basically when you're with Riley, you're completely safe, but it's so unique that I didn't feel that way. I still feel vulnerable when exploring the mall.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was going to be, I don't know if you found this little file when you first go into the mall basement, when you turn the power on, there's like a side room you could go into. It's like really terrifying. Your flashlights are on, and then you find this file that's talking about like the mall being overrun by infected.
Oh, no. Oh. Cool. No.
Okay, so that to me was like a huge foreshadow, like that the whole time in the mall, even in like the carousel part, like I was waiting for like a turnaround, and then the next time I thought for sure she'd be like taken by an infected. I was always watching like the horizon for like a horde of. I
love that because they play off that expectation, right? When you're in the Halloween store, I love that, like trying on the masks. And
that was super cool.
Did you do like the skull shaker and then like read the? Did you do all of them? Yeah, awesome. There's a part in there that I really, really liked, and I laughed a lot during this DLC. I thought it was very like I don't know how to describe it in regards to touching your heart in between the two, right? And in that regard, it sounds weird. I'm gonna say touch your heart, and then I'm gonna say this quote, but at the end, Riley says something. Will I ever get boobs? I did, but I mean that's because I gained weight.
The tender age of 13.
And Riley shakes it and she's like, will Ellie ever be funnier than me? And it's like, don't count on it. And then Ellie is like Riley's laughing and Ellie says, well, Skeletor can suck my dick. And I was like, that rules. That seemed like a very like a teenager thing. Like I said, I think they captured the essence of being a teenager, which is great because whether it be now in a modern day setting versus something like an apocalyptic setting where there's zombies and stuff, it still like captured the humanity of like nothing has changed in that world, and I thought that was really, really brilliant. Right. Did it still frighten you when the first clicker and whatever runner, I forget what they're called, come out when you do like the garage?
Stalkers, yes.
Yeah, when it's like that flooded garage. I thought that was awesome. I loved that. I was so scared.
I explored that whole area thoroughly, and what I didn't like is I didn't find an entrance point because I was like, I know that something's gonna go down here, so I tried to find an entrance point.
It felt like the generator spot in the basement of the game, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I explored thoroughly, and then when they just came out of nowhere, I was like, "Come on! Like, you could have at least made like something like open."
Oh, whatever. Stop being such a negative Nelly. I guess I really liked. I love the playfulness of like the carousel, the Halloween store. I thought the arcade was awesome.
Yeah, the arcade was
When
cool
when she's
sequence.
when she's describing it to you, and you have to like I actually close my eyes when like she's like close your eyes, Ellie.
I need to see those QTEs.
Right.
How else
Well,
did you-
I screwed up the first one because I was closing my eyes because I was so enveloped in the carriage. But
fail. Why?
But it's so weird because it's so like epic and romantic, like in real life. But when you go external from the television, I'm like, you know what I mean, sitting in a
Right.
chair and closing my eyes, and it's dark and
I'm behind you, like covering them and describing. X.
old X and left. You're so beautiful. Then I wave my hair.
Did you go into that
Did
photo
I wave
booth?
my hair?
Did you go
During
into
that
the photo
immersion?
booth?
Oh yeah, I posted this
Yeah,
on
okay.
Facebook too.
Oh, did you? You're a nerd.
Like, well, I didn't. It was so stupid. At the beginning, it says like connect to Facebook for a better experience. You have been blonde.
Yeah, as if you did that. That's fuck. No,
Well,
I'm just kidding. No.
Did you have to connect to Facebook
Yeah,
when it
I
asked
did.
you to?
I guess it didn't do anything for me because I did not post that. Mine were too sacred.
What did you choose? Love, friends, or whatever the other stupid one was?
Cool.
I did the rabbit had
Yeah,
sunglasses on. I did the
yeah.
same thing.
That's
You can
it.
check my Facebook to clarify if I did select cool.
I'll check later.
Oh, good. I thought it wrapped up really nicely. There was a nice balance between combat and exploring and being in a world that I wasn't overly frightened of. I thought, like, did you win the water gun fight?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
yeah. Did you win both of them?
Yes.
So the one where you
did you
beat
win the brick toss?
Yep.
I didn't. I
Oh,
lost
there's
that
a
one.
trophy for it.
Is there? Shit.
Brick Master.
There was a trophy for something else. What was it? It's called Skills. That was the trophy. What was that for?
I think I got that one. I think it's the water gun fight.
Skills. Yeah, okay, it could be.
I think it's
yeah,
the water
I
gun
think
fight.
it is. I think you're right. You win the water gun fight. I had also played. I just finished playing the campaign because I was running through it with my girlfriend. She wanted to watch and I really wanted to discuss the ending with her.
Right.
So for me, like I had got to experience, like I feel like for the most part, a lot of people haven't really thought about or played like the Last of Us campaign since around when it came out or like a month or two later.
Right.
But so for me, hearing like the direct references where like I feel like they must have been a little more powerful for the people who haven't played it in a while. Like for example, when Riley says, let's be all poetic and just wait it out and lose our minds together. Like I feel like that would be like one of those like powerful moments in the campaign that people will be like, I'm involved in that. You know, like
Right.
I remember that, like that involves me. Like that's like an inside joke and
Right.
I understand it, right?
So you're referring to when Ellie makes a direct reference in the main campaign, right?
Yes, yeah.
Right, and I feel like that ties the things together, right? I feel that at the end of the day, like they have to like do a callback to the story of The Last of Us, right?
Right,
And
exactly.
but at the same time, I do somewhat agree because they already do the callback with showing the contrast between Ellie being vulnerable
Right.
versus being like a strong young adolescent, right? And
Right.
they show her when she's able to take on the clickers and like evil men, and when she's with Riley, when she probably wouldn't be able to take on something like that, like a
Right,
role like that.
right.
So I do like somewhat agree with your point in that regard, but at the same time, I do feel it fits like in that world, right? As she develops as a character, you might not like her development as a character, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's potentially negative, right? It's just something that you don't agree with as
Right.
a whole, I guess.
I guess I would have preferred if a lot more subtle touches. Okay, for example, when Ellie finds the bow, like you know, if you're like a heavy user of like the Last of Us campaign, you remember that when you come to after the big dramatic thing when Joel falls off the horse and
trampoline.
she's like, "Tell me what to do," and then you're wondering for the next sequence, like, is Joel dead? Is because you start playing as Ellie,
Right.
and she's equipped with a bow.
Right, and
She
you're
doesn't
hunting
have a
in the
hunting
woods.
rifle, and
Yeah.
she has a handgun, right?
Right.
So I really loved that because I was thinking about that. I'm like, wait, Ellie has a bow in the other one. Like, I hope I find it and I'm able to use it. So when you find it, it's like, I love those subtle touches for the heavy user, like something to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense with the main campaign, right? Like that's like that makes sense as like I don't know, a prequel or like a DLC or like extra content instead of like giving it away, right? Like with direct references, like let's be all poetic and lose our minds together. I just feel like stuff like that, it turns a statement into something like, oh, that was really beautifully put by Ellie. Like to say like,
Okay.
well, why didn't we be we decided to be all poetic and lose our minds together? That's like a beautiful statement. But when it becomes a direct reference, then
Okay. So you feel like she's deriving from Riley.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I definitely agree with that. That's
Right.
very, very interesting.
One thing I want to touch on before I forget, before this gets too long, is, and this is sort of sensitive, but, okay, so you heard Ellen Page came out, right?
Yep.
Okay, on Valentine's Day.
February 20th.
Fuck's sake. Okay, so you fell asleep for 6 days, I guess. And then same day, Last of Us DLC comes out.
I thought that was a little good timing, Ellen Page.
So what are your thoughts of that? Like, I've heard like publicity stunt, and then I've heard like mass coincidence.
Serendipitous.
What are your thoughts?
Serendipitous. Like, I don't feel Ellen Page is overly concerned with Sony's agenda.
Right.
I don't.
But at the same time, I've heard that she very much is. Like, I heard there was suing involved for the likeness of Ellie's character.
I don't think she gives a shit about The Last of Us.
Right.
That's just my opinion. I don't think she's following it. I think like she had a forum to speak, and she did so, and she came out, and I think that's brave of her, and I think that's all there is relatively to it. I don't think there's like an agenda to it, especially with I feel the impact of Naughty Dog talking about sexuality and like being either like a lesbian or bisexual or being confused as a teenager, that was already discussed in Gone Home. So I don't think it was as much as an impact. I think if they did that 6 months ago, it would have blown people away. But with Gone Home already done, it's still very powerful. I think it moves the medium forward, but I think that it didn't impact me like I think they wanted it to.
I don't think the whole like the homosexual or the sexual orientation of Ellie is at all the issue. I'm more talking about the whole Ellen Page thing. I mean, I think either way that would have been received just fine. I'm just wondering like if Ellen, like let's say hypothetically Ellen Page was really pissed off about Ellie's character, and then like this came out, I'm sure she'd be like, oh come on.
That's how she gets back. I'm sure Naughty Dog decided to change it at the last minute and be like, hey, you know what? It's just a little few extra coding to make them kiss. I'm sure they just hugged.
Can you make them kiss?
And how? Yeah. Well, originally we just wanted them to hug, but then Ellen Page came out, so we made them kiss, and then there's a deleted scene that you can unlock: up, down, left, right, BA. X4 start.
X4 start.
That's right.
Nice.
It's a keyboard plus. That's also the
right. You have like the keyboard.
That's right. Surprise.
Anyway, and I want everyone to be honest. The four of you will be watching this. Were you disappointed that Ellie is not interested in men? Yes or no?
Mom, be honest. Put the comments at the bottom. So
right down here.
Yeah. So with that being said, I think we've talked about The Last of Us in regards that we don't overly agree on everything.
Right.
But how do you rate The Last of Us on a scale of 1 to 10? Go.
I give it a rock solid 8.5 out of 10.
Oh my God. So I'm going to do some hard leg kicks to your thighs. And then when you're eventually tired, I'm going to ground pound you.
Okay.
Until you eventually...
That sounds sexual.
I'm not sure you tap out or if you just eventually go limp. I'm not sure. Anyway, my point being is I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
After all that justification.
After all that?
After that justification.
Cool.
So I still give it a 9 out of 10, only 0.5 higher than you, but I think it's brilliant. I think it's pushing the medium forward. I think it's a very, very strong statement of where video games can go in regards to story, character development, as well as gameplay. I feel the gameplay is very, very strong in The Last of Us, despite what people think it being very limited. I disagree with that. I think it's the controls being somewhat like shaky or reminiscent of being scared and reminiscent of being inexperienced with a weapon. So I think that it's right on point. I think it's very, very, very good DLC. I think it's the best DLC I've played in a video game.
Right. I think that you could have just gave it a 9 out of 10. You don't need to like manhandle me to give it you could just go ahead and give it